Okay, so, and Representative Rajas will be here. He has a commitment every day, just if y'all ever wonder why he always comes in late. He has a little commitment every single day that he has to do, that has to do with his broadcasting duties. And so he's a little bit late, and that's why. So, but he'll be here as soon as he can, I'm sure. Okay, just to let you all know, I did report out to the Appropriations Committee this morning on the 4 budgets that we've done so far, and that went well. I mean, I think it went fine. They did harass me just a little bit, like they do in the Appropriations Committee, but it wasn't too terribly bad. They asked some questions, but it wasn't too bad. So, and then what we're doing this week, I'll report out next week. So y'all are always welcome to listen in or be there if you want to. Okay, so what we're going to do this right now is I'm going to call on Shirley to give us a little bit of an overview again of you all have that Regent. It's this one, right, Shirley? It's a post-secondary education system-wide. This is all of the schools. Shirley's going to go over this just a little so you know what is in here. And as you're hearing from each of the individual schools, it might be helpful to look at the page that deals with this school, besides the things that they have given us. So, Shirley, if you'll please do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And actually, because you wanted some more paper, I provided a purple document or lavender with all of the budget analysis for this agency or for this committee together. So everything's together in that one booklet. The one thing I wanted to point out, and I went over this very, very briefly in the budget analysis, primarily as far as the budget numbers I went over were all of the universities and the Board of Regents combined. In the budget analysis for the post-secondary education system-wide, if you will turn to page 27, it's toward the back, you will see that each university is separated out. There is a paragraph for the description of that university. Then there is a table that's broken out for the last 3 years, the actuals for 2020, estimate for 2021, and the GovRec for 2021 and 2022. There's a description of each agency for fiscal year 22, what the agency request was, what the governor's recommendation is. And the one thing I'll point out for the universities is in that opening paragraph that describes the university, there is a bold sentence at the bottom of that paragraph. We always provide you the increase or decrease in the FTE student, which is a little bit different than head count. It's full-time equivalent students, so you can see if it's gone up or if it's gone down and what the percent is over last year. So if you have any questions or anything as we go through these agencies individually, this morning we have Pittsburg State, and their budget starts at the bottom of page 34.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Shirley? But we wanted to point that out because we thought that might be helpful. Some of you were wanting some more numbers and understanding kind of the big picture of each university. So any questions on that? Okay, great. Okay, so I'm sorry. Okay, with no further questions, we are going to go ahead and call on Dr. Stephen Scott, who is the president of Pittsburg State. Dr. Scott, we will do about 15 minutes and then have a time for questions, so you know what to expect. And committee, be thinking about your questions for Dr. Scott. Okay, thank you so much for being here with us in the Higher Education Budget Committee.
Well, Madam Chair, thank you very much for allowing me to present. Appreciate the work of the committee and always appreciate this opportunity. Today, I would love to have driven to Topeka. As much time as we spend in beautiful Pittsburg, Kansas, that's wonderful, but it's really good to be around other people. So I'm sorry I can't be there, and I know you all understand that. It is my pleasure to address the committee, and I see Representative Rogers just joined us, and I enjoyed Hanover one morning, and kind of look forward to the day we can get back and have some of that great food over at the pancake place. I bet you agree. Not necessarily good for us, but certainly fun to do. But I want to talk about Pittsburg State University, of course. It is the favorite thing that I do speak about and do so on a regular basis. But before I do, I've not met everybody in the room, so I wanted to just give you just a 90 seconds of where I came from. You may know this. I'm a native of Kansas. I grew up in Baxter Springs, didn't get too far away from home, ended up going to Pittsburg State University, got a couple of degrees here in mathematics, and went on to grad school at Oklahoma State University, dropped a game to KU last night. And in 1988, I came here as an assistant professor without a doctorate, and I've been here ever since. Been in a variety of roles, from faculty member to chair, dean, provost, and really have seen it all. And now really is the longest serving president of one of the 6 public institutions in the state. I'm in my 12th year, which is just hard to imagine. That's where I am. So this is the 12th time that I've testified to a committee such as this, and each time is I know is very, very important, because the work of the committee is very important as well. So I know Shirley does a great job of keeping you updated. She also does a great job of providing, like she just said, a lot of paperwork. And so what we've tried to do today with our message is really to simplify it, because I know you deal with a lot of different issues throughout your week as a representative. And so we've got a document here that we shared with you. It's just 2 pages, and really provides some highlights of some of the things we're working on, some of the challenges we have. And certainly at the end, I'll talk to you more about COVID-19, as I'm sure you've heard from each of the CEOs, and you will continue to hear. At the top of this handout, though, it's so important to see this is what we're about. Our mission statement is very simple. We exist to create transformational experiences for our students and for our community. And those are the images that you see across that page. As our students exit the graduation stage, that's not the end of our time to care about them. We want them to be in great jobs. We want them on to professional schools. And our job is to transform them into a position where they can successfully do that. At the far right, that picture is Block 22. And that is our downtown development, where we have 100 students living downtown, 3 new restaurants that have gone in, an innovation space. And it is a $20 million investment at Pittsburg State University, private developers, to really, in some ways, supercharge what's going on downtown. And it is really working. I've been to downtown Hayes, and I love what they've done downtown. Vice Chair, I mean, it's just a great place to go and have a nice dinner. And if you like locally brewed beer, it's a great place to be. We saw that and wanted to do something like that, and we've certainly reproduced that in some ways, as well as providing student housing downtown. So that's an element of us that you might think is beyond what we should be doing, but in our minds, it's exactly what we should be doing. And then that middle picture is about the transformation of ourselves. We've never stood still since our founding in 1903, and certainly the pandemic has really accelerated the kinds of changes that we've had to make as an institution. Just to give you some context, because each time I talk to a legislative group, sometimes I'm surprised that there'll be legislators in the room that have never been to Pittsburgh or not been to Pittsburg State University. And one of the best things that the legislature used to do was the bus tour, where they'd come in and see the campuses, kick the tires, talk to the local individuals and community members. And I hope at some point in the future, you all would consider doing that. But about 6,400 students who we serve across our campus. We have a small operation in the Kansas City area, of course. Over the last 4.5 years, we've reduced our full-time equivalent employment by 128 positions. And that is our very, very active role on our part to manage our spending. You heard from President Farley yesterday, I believe. Yesterday, Farley was a teacher of mine back when I took a course on finance and higher education. And just as he's never had a deficit budget and a deficit year, neither has Pittsburg State University in the last 12 years. The dollars we bring in, we're very careful to not spend more than the dollars we bring in. To have an old-fashioned value is something I believe in strongly. In addition to the state funding, of course, and to the tuition funding, we also are very successful in raising money to support our students. And we provide about $7 million in scholarships, and that's grown almost 60% in the last 13 years. Each year, we raise about $10 million in private support. And as you know, Crawford County is a very, very poor county, has a number of negative health indicators, but there's amazing wealth here as well, and entrepreneurs that turn around and help Pittsburg State University on a regular basis. We're going to, in fact, expand and completely renovate our nursing building due to a $6 million gift. Like 3 individuals went together for a $6 million gift to make that project take place. Just a great example of the support we have. And those are all local individuals that made that happen. We've been very successful in federal grants in the most recent couple of years. Sean Nacarado leads our downtown operation. He also leads our extramural funding efforts. We patterned some of what we've done after NIR and what Wichita State has done, and really have to give kudos to Senator Jerry Moran, who's really been helpful to us to help us add $6.5 million in just calendar year 2020 to Pittsburg State University, and that might surprise you. And then finally, and just as importantly, our Small Business Development Center has been very active through the pandemic of supporting local businesses, helping them apply for PPP, and now they're in another round of that, and really believe 661 jobs have been, in essence, saved because of that work. And that is ongoing. That's not just pandemic related. Top programs across the spectrum at Pittsburg State University. Number 1 is nursing. Almost 10% of our student body would be nursing students. 8% are in construction. And you know, those are high wage, high demand jobs. Those individuals go to work very quickly. In the nursing field, they're looking at signing bonuses, and we're really doing well in the nursing area and also in construction. We have a high placement rate in pre-med and been very successful with that over the years. And of course, we have teacher education, and we have a very strong business program. But those are the top programs. And over the last several years, we've used an external consultant to look at every single program and examine what is the return on investment. What does that program cost us, and what kind of revenue does that program generate? It's been a very, very successful effort. And the provost has been using that as he reallocates or allocates new positions or reallocates existing positions. And I mentioned we've reduced our full-time equivalent employment base by 128 in the last 4.5 years. We've also reduced within that 128, 51 faculty positions. So that is our response to the financial challenges that we've had. We've not just said, I know Vice Chair is going to talk about this in a minute, are asking for more. It's what are we doing on our campus to control our costs? How do we manage the positions that we have and make sure that we're not exceeding our budgets and that we're responding to the financial pressures in a very active way? The diagram there at the top of the second page really talks about us transforming ourselves, and certainly the provost's work, Dr. Howard Smith, and the work he's done with program review that you've heard about, the regents are driving, and as he works with the consultants on where do we put the positions, where can the positions deliver the best value for the university, for the region. We've also then, if you look at that picture across there, where it says academic programs, professional research, and commercialization, it's just a great example of where we've taken a strength in polymers and we've built strong, strong plastic programs out of it. And we've commercialized products. And I didn't know if I should put a picture of a pillow on there or not, but on the right there is a flexible foam that's a commercialized product that comes from Pittsburg State University. At the other end of that would be a 2-year program in plastics. We have a 4-year program in plastics. We have a graduate program in plastics, and we do research in plastics and polymers. So you can just see that spectrum of student engagement, student research, professional research, commercialized products, that you might not expect to see on a regional campus. But again, a former governor, former Senator Sam Brownback was helpful in this project, and so has the Kansas Legislature by allocating additional support for the Kansas Polymer Research Center through the Polymer Chemistry Initiative. So if you think back to 2008, we're still about $1.5 million down from the funding level in 2008. And that's not thinking about CPI or the Higher Education Pricing Index. We're still below the figure that we had at one point in time in terms of state support. And the governor has made a recommendation that she's going to restore the gear money, but our budget would be reduced by 5.5%, which is a total of $2 million. And I read with great interest, and I bet you all did too, this Kansas Framework for Growth. And I think this is an important document to how do we lay out what can we do in Kansas to really drive a successful and a viable economy, a vibrant economy that is sustainable over time. And as I read that document, I looked for where does higher education show up? Because it does include comments about food safety, food security, aviation industry, pharmaceutical research, polymer research, centers of excellence, centers of innovation. And every time I saw that language, I thought Wichita State, KU, K-State, Fort Hays, Emporia, Pittsburg State. Higher education needs to be a part of that. We are a part of that, and we've been doing our work in that, and we want to do more, but providing a $2 million budget cut is not really going to facilitate us doing more and being the kind of partner in this and the driver in this that we'd want to be. So that's probably the most important message to you, is really ask for reconsideration of the budget recommendation of the governor and that $2 million reduction. Very, very painful for us to look at. Under the word reality, just have some comments there from the Lumina Foundation. I know you're all familiar with this, but higher education does deliver value, certainly to regional economies, to state economies, but it also delivers value to individuals who make a better living, have more financial security, do a better job of planning for retirement, have better health indicators, participate at a greater level in their communities. And they're also more generous. They pay more taxes. There's a lot of value that comes back from those individuals. And then finally, and Madam Chair, I did want to keep this very brief to keep you on time, but I want to talk about COVID-19. It has really dominated our efforts. There's just no doubt about it. 56% of our coursework in the fall and again this spring has been delivered via remote learning, as you would say. $2.7 million, you see those numbers across there, has been delivered to students in the form of direct student aid that was required by the HERF funding. And we'll see that again this spring. In the fall, we had a 3.7% decline in enrollment. And we don't like negative numbers, but that's a better number than many institutions across the country saw because of the pandemic. And really saw, as the chancellor said yesterday, we saw that at the front end, at freshman level, which concerns us over time. As Emporia State's president will report, we had good increase in numbers at the graduate level, and we think those are going to continue. Our enrollment for the spring right now is down about 3%, which actually sounds like we may have a little bit of a recovery already underway. One of the things we have really talked about on our campus, and I know you're faced with this there in Topeka, is how do you live with this virus and how do you not allow the virus to chase you underground or into your basement? And so we have really worked to do things that are normal, including we had 7 commencement ceremonies in November. Boy, did the parents appreciate that. And we went to school on across the country. There were some ways people did things like drive-throughs or walk-throughs. And we have some pretty nice facilities here. We were able to have our students walk through with their family, get their diplomas, give me an elbow bump, couldn't shake hands. And we had that moment and they got that diploma. But that is a symbol of the efforts we made to drive normalcy into our operations and to create as more a normal environment as we could for our students. And then the number 1 means that on November 14th, this last fall, our football team played Stephen F. Austin. They're a Division I FCS school. There's 160 some teams that play football at Division II level. There was one football team playing on November 14th. November 21st, there were 2. We played 4 football games. Only 11 teams across the country figured out how to play football. And I am very proud of that. We did it. We kept the student athletes safe. We allowed them to compete. We allowed our coaches to coach. And again, it's that focus on what can we do that is normal. And if you've been in Pittsburg, Kansas in the fall on a Saturday afternoon when there's a home football game, you will see how important that game is to the fabric of this community. You know, we have 26 skyboxes that are owned by banks and attorneys, construction companies, and so on. Those people love guerrilla football. But guess what they also love? Pittsburg State University. And so that affinity for our athletics really turns into affinity for and support across the campus. And we know that. And we needed to deliver something to them, and we did. The byproduct of that is, and because we worked to bring our students here, because we sought to be normal, the Crawford County sales tax collection was up 3%. Now, you know, a lot of people had less money in their pocket, but we think we had something to do with that. And that's not something we didn't think about. In fact, Sean Nacarado is co-chairing the community task force that's focused on recovery. And it's not a task force focused on COVID-19, it's focused on the recovery. And Pittsburg State University is right at the heart of that effort, working with the city and working with the county to make sure we survive this pandemic, we thrive as we get through it, and we're better partners and we're better off on the other side. So that is a very quick look at a $100 million operation that has many, many stakeholders that, as you can imagine, I am super proud of. So with that, I'd be glad to stand for your questions.
Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate that presentation. Okay, committee, what questions you have for Dr. Scott? Okay, did you say you? Representative Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. President Scott, good to see you. Sorry I was late. I was dealing with a constituent matter, and I had every intention. I was going to be here 2 minutes early, but that's why, you know, we won't talk to any professors I had in college. But I'm looking at your numbers. 56% of your students attended, you know, kind of in person. But that seems to be a number higher than we've seen other places. Why do you think that is?
Well, 2 things. I need to clarify. That's 56% of our courses were offered face-to-face, in-person courses. Okay, so that's just want to clarify that. And I think one reason is, you know, we had a motto here for years that by doing, learn. We have a lot of labs. You know, you think about the Kansas Technology Center alone, 280,000 square feet, 55 different laboratories throughout that building. You can't replicate that in a remote environment. You just can't do it. And so I think the tech center made us a little heavier on the face-to-face.
Well, and I think, I guess I asked the question wrong, because that's what I wanted to mean with all the hands-on learning you do. Are the students, are they behind half a semester, a year, or still able to stay on track because of all this?
I would say they're on track. Our faculty have done a remarkable job of adjusting instruction, responding to students, responding to individual student needs. And you know, we checked out laptops when people didn't have laptops. We've expanded our Wi-Fi to include parking lots where students can come park their cars and use laptops if the buildings are closed. So I don't think we're seeing a loss or, in fact, one of the three goals we set when we faced all this, the third goal we listed was we want to make sure our students continue to make progress so they don't ever come back and say to us, I had to go another semester or I had to go another year. That is a loss that we just don't want to see happen. So I just don't think it's there.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
Representative Wassinger?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Scott, I I have two comments to make. The first one is I'm hoping that I can get a chance to speak to you sometime this week about your role with the NCAA, which is outside of this discussion. So if that's possible sometime this week, I'd really like to visit with you. And then second, it's nice to hear that Hayes gave you some great inspiration. We're very inspiring in Ellis County.
Well, that's a good place. It's a good place.
Thank you. I did note that the governor wanted to give $10.3 million to the universities through the Kansas Board of Regents. So I hope you will be counting that $10.3 million so that the Kansas Board of Regents make sure it gives it to the universities and takes care of you in this time of need. But I also have a question. You said you're going to build a new building. That's pretty exciting. With private money, is that correct?
It's a remodel.
It's a remodel. Okay.
It's a remodel. So it's the nursing building that's existed since the 70s. And really, it's really a deferred maintenance project, but guess what? It's going to be paid for by private dollars.
Okay. Shirley, I have a question. Does that, even a building remodel, apply to, I had it here, 76-790, where they have to do a private savings fund to maintain the remodeling? Does that?
Yes, I believe it would.
So have you anticipated doing that, Dr. Scott?
Yeah, I'd have to really research that to answer that question, because that building existed prior to what was the date, Shirley, 2007. So we've enticed 3 donors to give us $6 million to gut and rebuild that building and add a little bit of square footage.
Yes, and I think that's
pretty cool.
amazing, but then it still applies to that statute where a private, a maintenance fund needs to be set up.
I don't know.
I think that we've been a little remiss in not requiring our higher education institutions to adhere to that and follow the statute. So I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I would like to see that, and if you could get back to us on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. We'll take a look at that and see whether that applies or not.
Okay, and I think your Performing Arts Center probably needed that too, but that's another thing you can look into.
Yeah, we did. I think we've done a nice job with that. We took some bonds that had paid off and talked to the students about creating a fund that would service the Bicknell Center, our student health center as well.
The maintenance fund is also through bonding, and that was from an earlier statute. So I would like to see if you could give me some information on both of those.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions for Dr. Scott? I'd like to ask, you said that you were down, the FTs, and that was 51 faculty. Have you discontinued some of your programs or majors, or what have you done with that?
Yeah, I missed that in my comments, but over the last 10 years, we have actually closed 52 programs. Some of those would be emphasis areas, some of those would be majors, some of those would be minors, and have a very active effort underway right now. As you all know, the Kansas Board of Regents have asked us to take a really hard look at our programs. That coupled with the consultants work that we've done, we're going to be very active in that again, and I believe Dr. Smith will be presenting that to the Board Standing Committee on Academic Affairs this next week, and you'll hear about a number of additional closures as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else on the committee? Questions? So Dr. Scott, Pitt State does have a soft spot in my heart because my daughter-in-law graduated from Pitt State. So we have become gorilla fans. So
that's a good thing. Once a gorilla, always a gorilla. Too.
Okay, well, we've joined the ranks now. So, okay, with that, I don't think we have any more questions. So thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for your work. Thanks.
Okay, committee. We will now hear from Matt Lindsay with the Kansas Community Colleges. Welcome back to the committee, Matt.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Matt, just to, about 15 minutes is what we're thinking. Yeah.
I'll probably be able to get you back some of your time.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Matt Lindsay. I'm the president of the Kansas Independent College Association. So I speak on behalf of, again, the 20 not-for-profit accredited colleges and universities across the state. Madam Chair, you were so gracious to invite me to the committee a few weeks ago to give you a summary of some of the things that we're doing. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time in that part of my testimony, except to remind you that our schools, we are not part of the Regents system. So we are independent of their work. We work alongside them. We are cooperative. We are partners. But we are not under their umbrella. So we are funded independently, hence the I in KICA. And just to also point out that we've had actually amid the pandemic, we've done okay. Our enrollment on main campus was up 2.4%, primarily because we gained an out-of-state student. Because we were open in person, because we were basically trying to navigate a pandemic with our model, which is in-person, face-to-face, small classrooms. And it probably helped attract more out-of-state students because we were doing that. So we continue to do so. We actually have more employees than we did a year ago because we had to serve more students. And so we're proud that we've been able to so far navigate the pandemic. Now, what does that mean in the future? Only the future can tell. We're hopeful that we can retain those students and keep them here in the great state of Kansas once the virus and the pandemic is in our rearview mirror. As another reminder, so we serve about 11% of the total students in the state, and we award about 19% of the bachelor's degrees in the state every year. So we turn 11% into 19% every year. In my testimony, I've again given you the funding notes from COVID and sort of where our funds came from in COVID, so just as a reminder from when we spoke before. Let me turn then to our requests for the state's budget discussions for your deliberations moving forward. And we have two that we'd like to talk about. One is the only place that students who attend a nonprofit college in the state receive state support. And that's in aid, student aid, scholarships, grants. Not get a single cent for building buildings. We don't get any dollars for building classrooms, for building residence halls, for building sports facilities and arts facilities. We raise our own money for those things. The only part of the state budget that touches our schools currently is student aid. And the biggest part of that is the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. That is the state's need-based aid program. That is the money we provide to a Kansan with need to attend a four-year college or university in the state, whether they want to go to a public university or a nonprofit college. Wisely said, student aid should be about supporting the student and their family and not make it sector specific. That program represents $16 million in the SGF higher ed budget, that goes for $16 million is for all the schools, $16.2 million, half of which approximately goes to these students who attend nonprofit colleges. So about $8 million and change comes to students who go to the private colleges in the state. That's 1% of all the money you spend in higher ed. For that 1%, let me reiterate, we give you 19% of the bachelor's degrees. So I would say this is a pretty efficient program that we're able to provide as our role in the higher education ecosystem. Moreover, we know that the students who receive that money are 6 percentage points more likely to graduate on time than their peers. 6 percentage points. That program works. Now, we have not particularly done a great job of funding that program. Kansas is a very low student aid state, especially relative to our neighbors. Put about $130 per FTE into student need-based aid. Our neighbors vastly outpace us. We have mostly level funded that for a generation. A couple of years ago, and I think Shirley can probably confirm for me, we added $500,000 to that, and that is really basically the only addition that's been made to that program in more than a decade. We therefore can only support about 1 in 3 students who would qualify for this aid. For every 1 student we can help go to college, every 1 Kansan we can help afford college, we have to turn 2 of them away. We should do better. And especially, I would say we should do better because as we come out of the pandemic, we're going to have a whole lot of high school students who graduated and didn't go straight to college because they were burned out by dealing with hybrid and online and all the switches back and forth, and who can blame them? Once you leave the educational pipeline, it is that much harder to go back to school. I'm sorry, I will lean even closer. I'm trying not to breathe all over everything. So when you finish high school and you leave the pipeline, it is that much harder to get you back into the pipeline. On top of it, we know families everywhere are suffering economically. So we need to be helping them help afford college of any level to get our workforce educated in the ways that our economy will survive. And one tool we have that we know is efficient and effective is the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. So if we are going to go down a line of adding to the governor's recommendations, and we are grateful the governor level funded this program, if we are going to go down a road of adding to anything the governor recommended, I want to strongly encourage you to consider adding to the tool that helps more families afford college. And that's the Kansas Comprehensive Grant. The second request we have, and we testified in front of the House Appropriations last week about the University Engineering Initiative. When that was created 10 years ago, nonprofit colleges were not included in the University Engineering Initiative. Yet we have one already ABET accredited engineering program in the nonprofit world at Benedictine College. It was actually the fastest to receive ABET accreditation of any school in the country. It is growing and growing in leaps and bounds. They are recruiting students from out of state. 75% of their students come from somewhere else, and half of those stay in Kansas when they finish. So they're educating engineers and bringing them to Kansas. They're contributing to brain gain. I have a number of other schools that would love to launch an engineering program. But then they look at the fact that recruiting and retaining faculty when competing at an uphill battle with a state-supported program that only flows to the 3 regional universities makes it almost insurmountable for them to do that and do that well. Because ABET requires you to have at least 3 PhD faculty to have an engineering program. It's hard to recruit and retain faculty in Kansas generally, and especially if we're playing uphill. So we would like to see that program, if it is to be extended, include private colleges and include additional funding, not taking funding away from the regents. This is not about a competition. This is about supporting growth of engineering in the state. We believe private colleges should be included. So as you consider this budget, consider that line as a place that private colleges would say that would be a way to make sure we're supporting all students and the way private colleges in the state can contribute to the workforce development, the economic development, and the educational ecosystem in the state. With that, I'm happy to stand for questions and wrap up.
Thank you, Matt. A couple quick questions I'll ask, and then hopefully the committee will ask questions. The Kansas Comprehensive Grant, you say half goes to the regions, half goes to, is that by statute? And I mean, you may have told us this before, but how does it happen to be half? You know, who makes the decision about that?
And this is probably one maybe Shirley can do a better job of answering than I can. The program is not what you would call like a college voucher. It's not like a Pell Grant where the money goes directly to the student. It's more like it's what we'd call in our world institutional aid. So the money is appropriated and then it is divided between the 2 sectors and then further divided to the institutions to give to the students. There are some, I mean, we can get into some complicated rules on how the funding is determined and what how we determine how much everybody got in 1999 when we merged 3 programs and all. But the basics, I think, to the answer to your question, Madam Chair, is we created a program where the institutions administer the funding, which is actually a much leaner administrative program for the state.
And generally it's 50-50? Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
It's actually written into the appropriations bill, and you can change it if you want to. You can add money to it. You can put in provisos that says of this new money, this much goes to one or the other. Mm-hmm. They have in the past changed the percentages. I think they changed it to 40-60 one year. So that's up to you.
Okay. Was that 40-60 which direction?
It was 60 to the independents.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. And then one other question. Compared to the engineering programs at K-State, KU, and WSU, how many students are there at Benedictine?
Much smaller. So we would be graduating, Benedictine will be graduating 30 students this spring in engineering, and according to their new freshman and sophomore numbers, they're looking at somewhere close between 45 and 50 in 2 years. Okay. That would be by nature. I mean, Benedictine's total enrollment is 2,000 and change, so, so I would not expect us to be adding the same number of engineers.
Right. Understandable. I just was curious how that compared. So, okay, thank you. All right, Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just dig into that engineering part just a little bit more for me. Would you? I mean, there are a lot of niches in engineering, and so your niche, or for Benedictine, is you're graduating 30 IT engineering folks, right? I mean, there could be a whole lot of different places. So is there, when you talk about expanding out the engineering program, are you finding a niche that maybe the K-State, KU, WSU is not doing? Or do you just say this is a whole program and whatever you want to do, it's engineering? I know that's not true, but
Sure.
explain that a little more.
And I'll answer it in two ways. One is, and Benedictine we'll stick there for a moment. They are A-Bed accredited in mechanical and electrical. They're pursuing a couple
Yeah.
others, and they should have engineering accreditation and a couple more soon. However, I think our niche is not in the field, but in the approach. There are plenty of students out there who would love to be engineers, who will feel that their place for them to go to post-secondary education is a school like Benedictine, that they're more likely to succeed in a small school environment and graduate with that engineering program degree than if they go to a larger public school. That's not true for everyone. We should be encouraging all of these approaches. And if the goal of the statute is more engineers, we don't want to lose those engineers who want to go elsewhere.
Hey, committee, other questions? Representative Amix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Matt, going back to the need-based aid programs, and it's probably in the back here somewhere. What are the requirements again for a student or a family?
So a student to qualify must be a Kansas resident, and they must have economic need, meaning their cost of attendance minus their expected family contribution has to be greater than 0.
Very much, Madam Chair.
Representative Woodard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Matt. Great presentation as always. As you know, resources are tight, and I hate to ask anyone to pit two potentially children against one another. But when you're looking at the budget requests, if you had to choose from, or if this committee had to choose between additional funding for the Kansas Comprehensive Grant versus the addition of the independent colleges to the engineering initiative, again, tough choice. How would you advise this committee if it was one or the other?
Well, I would hope we were never in such a spot, because I don't think we would also say you can fund K-State or you can fund KU. I don't think that we should be thinking that way. We should be thinking about what are the goals of the state, what are we trying to accomplish. But if I play by your rules, I would say we should be putting more money in need-based aid because it serves every Kansan in a much broader sense than the engineering initiative.
Appreciate you indulging the question. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This isn't necessarily a question for Matt, but I'm just going through this and trying to find what page the information for the need-based aid is at as far as the governor's recommendations for that. Do you know where that's at in this packet?
It's page 19 is the start of all of the scholarships. The comprehensive grant is one of the scholarships, and that's the first one on the bottom of page 19.
Thank you, Representative, for bringing that to our attention too, and Shirley, that's helpful. Okay, other questions, committee? Representative Wessinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Matt, for being here. I appreciate it. And this, you're not ready for this question, so I apologize for blindsiding you. But I'm very impressed with the number of bachelor degrees that you do and the amount of time that you do that. I just, what is, now I've kind of, I'm way off schedule here, sorry. I appreciate everything that private schools do, being a product of a private school myself, private university. I would not have done well at KU or K-State, but I have children that did well there. But I saw there was a difference. So I appreciate all that the independent schools do. And I also want to thank you for making a choice between the comprehensive grant and the student needs. So I don't think I have a question there, as I got round in that sense, but how much do you spend per, do you have any kind of average that you spend per student as opposed to what the public schools do? Is that a fair question to ask you?
I'm not sure I have that data exactly as you're asking it offhand. I can probably pull it together relatively quickly, and with the chair's permission, I could email it to the committee and provide it if you'd like that.
That would be great.
I would note that I have ours. I don't know if I have the regions. You'd have to ask them for theirs.
That's true, but I appreciate that, and I think you have a lot of the information that you're putting out people with degrees more than, and I don't think that's being brought up in the other schools. So thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, if you could email that, we would appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had said that you want up to $2.5 billion more in funding for need-based aid programs. So I'm just wondering what the current funding for that is. Could you give me that number?
Shirley, do you want to actually quote the actual number? I can give you, off the top of my head, it's 16.2 million and change.
Okay, thank you. Is it at the top of page 20? Is that it? 16.258. Is that it? Okay. Yep. So it is at the top of page 20.
And Madam Chair, I would say that the 2.5 million I note here is on the average amount that gets distributed to students across the systems, public and private. That would be enough to support about 1,750 additional students. That's not an insubstantial number of additional students and families who would be helped by that amount of money. I chose that amount as an illustrative point of how many more families could you help with that increase.
So you're saying the 2.5 is around 1,700?
Be enough to support about 1,750 additional students.
Okay, because the 16.258 is 9,500 students, according to what we've got.
I don't know how deep we want to go, but the awards are done in such a way that the public universities can award a student up to $1,500, and the private colleges can award a student up to $3,500. But because, as I mentioned before, institutions are given the buckets, we get to cut them up more finely. So you don't have to just give a maximum award. If it would help some student to get a $500 award and another student to get a $2,000 award, we are allowed to do that. So the number I gave here is based on what the average award amount is if you were to add that additional money.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Shirley?
Just to give you a little more on the history of the comprehensive grant, they did have $400 more in 2020, which was a reappropriation. In 2021, last year during the session, they were given $2.5 million, but the governor allotted it. So they were up to 18.7. They're back down to 16.25.
But the agency has requested back to the 16, and the governor concurred, if I recall. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, anyone else? Thank you so much, Matt. Appreciate you being here. Okay, committee, we will now welcome Jim Ganette. Did we say that? The president of Manhattan Technical College. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Higher Education Budget.
Hi.
How do you say your last name?
The last name is pronounced Ganette. That's why you just say Jim.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's about 15 minutes, and then we'll ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Greetings from tropical Manhattan, Kansas, where the current temperature is 14 degrees. Yeah. Thank you for your time today. I'd like to visit with you about the 7 Kansas technical colleges. I'm the president of the President's Council for the tech colleges this year. And you may not know too much about us. I think I will give you information to let you know we are probably the most rapid return on investment of higher education in the state of Kansas, followed closely behind by the community colleges. Our mission with the tech colleges is very clear. It's workforce education with the word quality in it. We specialize in high wage, high demand occupations, critical need occupations, essential to the state and the state's economic development. We are coordinated by the state regents, not controlled by them. Most of us were VOTECs related to school districts years ago, separated out. None of us have any taxing authority. None of us get a property tax millage, a sales tax millage from home counties, nothing. 2 of our institutions, Wichita Tech and Flint Hills Tech, do get a small allocation from their county governments per year. It's not based on taxing authority. We are amazing in what we accomplish. As you'll see in the middle of the first page of the testimony from us, the state funding formula is supposed to be 2/3 from the state, 1/3 from the students for the tech colleges, since we don't have taxing authority. The reality is pretty much flipped. In the case of Manhattan Technical College, I get about 29% of my funding from the state and the students pay the rest. Wichita Tech gets about 20% from the state, their students pay the rest. Not having taxing authority can lead some people to think, oh my gosh, you can't get anything done. I think if you polled the 7 tech college presidents, they would tell you it's kind of a burst of freedom because we have great flexibility in what we can do. We're very responsive. We're not overburdened by governance. Nothing wrong with that because you're a governing body, but we're able to be very responsive to our regional needs and turn on a dime. When it comes to COVID, yes, we've all been impacted, but we're very entrepreneurial, so we kept things going pretty quickly from last March. All of us returned to our campuses through the coordination of our county health departments. In the case of Manhattan Tech, we were back on campus by May to finish out our students in the spring semester. Between the time we had to cut things off in March to May, we switched to online learning for the lectures. But we had to get students back on our campuses to finish teaching welding, auto technology, etc. There's not a good virtual or online way to do that. The COVID funds we've each received have been used for protective gear, sanitizing our campuses, as well as to help us with some of our distance learning. All of us have been strengthened in what we can do in sharing to the area high schools, to our branch campuses, if you will, our centers, and with each other. We have all been able to keep graduating students. Our program enrollment has stayed pretty steady, pretty full, and our job placement rates have stayed over 90%. So again, we push people out into our communities. When you look at page 2 down where it says impact of the technical colleges on the Kansas economy, I want to stress a few things. For the vast majority of the Kansas Tech colleges, our students stay in our service areas. In the case of Manhattan Tech, about 60% of our graduates stay in Riley, Geary, and Pottawatomie counties as employees, as taxpayers, and as consumers. So there's no faster way to rev up the state's economy and workforce than through the tech colleges and through the community colleges who have tech programs. We're putting people into the workforce almost daily, and we can't keep up with the demand, frankly. We have very high graduation rates, job placement rates, and we have good involvement from our community in terms of the workers, the employers with our advisory committees. Enrollment has been strong with the exception of COVID. We have suffered an enrollment decrease during COVID. It has been almost predominantly at the high school level with students starting college early. And that's been primarily due to the varied schedule of the high schools. There are different schedules for starting. Some have gone only remote, some have been hybrid. That has brought our numbers down somewhat. You'll notice, and I think Heather will mention this in her testimony for the community colleges, Excel and CTE, what used to be called SB 155, is where we would ask the committee's consideration of full funding. When that legislation was passed, it was termed as reimbursement. It's actually for services rendered. we get paid for after we've provided the enrollment and the coursework to the students. And that program has been a shining success around the state with rapid growth in enrollment and more high school students graduating high school, not just with that high school diploma, but many of them are earning a certificate in welding, in CNA, in auto technology, in building trades, etc. So it's been a very direct return on investment of putting people back into the workforce. They become, again, taxpayers, they become consumers. We are also very strong on the Student Success Index as measured by KBOR. Our completion rate has been in the 60 to 79% range for the past 10 years. Most of our students, when they do not graduate from the tech colleges, it's because they've had a fantastic job offer and they're not going to complete their program of study. That happens to us almost every day. The State Department of Labor provides data back to the regions that provides back to us as far as their employment in the state and their wages. And again, our students are staying strong, being employed in their areas of study and making a sustainable wage or higher. On the third page, partway down, you see the heading called National Analysis of Return on Investment of Higher Education. This came out in late 2019 by Georgetown University. They looked at 4,500 public and private colleges across the country and universities. For the state of Kansas, the top 5 public colleges and universities for net present value of your education over your 40-year career in any occupation. Number 1 was Washburn Tech. Number 2 was KU. Number 3 was K-State. Number 4 was Manhattan Tech. Number 5 was North Central Kansas Tech. 3 of the top 5 for value of your education and what it does for you over your working lifetime were tech colleges. We have all completed an economic impact study within the last year and a half. And you'll see the numbers there. And yes, Wichita Tech skews our numbers. Wichita Tech is the big dog the rest of us try to emulate. But in all of our communities, we're pumping money back into the local and regional economies by our purchasing, by our workers here, and by the workforce we're training. So again, when it comes to the funding considerations, we really would like to restore full funding to Excel and CTE. The governor has proposed some cuts to that. We need about $2.3 million put back in this year so that we're not prorated on that reimbursement level. And we need a little over $8 million for next year added to it. We're all seeing great interest again from the high schools. I met with 2 superintendents yesterday that can hardly wait until we can do more programs in their area for them and their students. I can't stress enough how fast we turn people back out, and our students in the tech colleges tend to graduate with low to no student enrollment. We are the least funded, if you will, by the state. If you look in the KBOR data book for 2021, which is based off the 2019 audits of the institutions, the 7 technical colleges combined received $21,621,000 from the state. For that, we educated over 15,000 students. If you run the numbers through the calculator like I did, that's an average cost per student of state dollars of just over $1,400 a year. And what we're putting out in workforce, return on investment, and again, I would say consumers and taxpayers. The other area I'd like to bring to your attention is on capital outlay. There's been funding for that very limited basis through the state since 1977. The appropriation for that amount has basically been unchanged since 1977. For the tech colleges, this is critical. We don't need Taj Mahals, we don't need brick, limestone, or chrome buildings, but we do need to be able to invest in updated equipment, and we do from time to time need a probably updated Butler building, because we do spill oil, we paint, we knock holes in walls, we learn how to do things with our hands. And so we would ask consideration to see if there's any way to start thinking about appropriating more money into capital outlay for us. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you so much. Committee, what questions do you have for Jim? I'll start with just a couple. Can you give us any sort of numbers, like when you're talking about the the concurrent credit, the reimbursement, the SB 155, what sort of numbers do you know, how many students are involved that are high school students that are actually enrolled in your programs?
It varies per institution. In my particular case, it's 45% of my enrollment. I think statewide, it's over 13,000 students in that program. Heather may have more specific. While the two-year colleges are separated by technical and community college sectors, we do work well with the community colleges, but I think it's over 13,000 students total.
Okay, great. And then what about, as far as the different technical schools, is there a lot of program duplication? I mean, I know it's in different sections of the state, but are there certain ones that emphasize different things? Tell me a little bit about the programs.
Sure will. Let me talk first about where there is duplication. Through working with the state regents and the Tech Ed Authority, we have what are called aligned programs. So for instance, welding is one of those. Welding is all across the state at both technical and community colleges, but we use a similar curriculum design so that if a student leaves and goes to a different school, they're not going to lose credit. They're going to be able to pick up where they dropped off. So those aligned programs are in very common areas essential to almost any community. Welding, nursing, auto technology, for instance. Each of the tech colleges then also has one or more specialty areas that feeds their particular area. Wichita Tech, it's definitely aerospace. In our case at Manhattan Tech, it's working with NBAF and the Animal Health Corridor on critical environment technology. Northwest Tech at Goodland, it's applied agriculture technology. So each of us does specialize related to the economy in our region.
Yep, that's super helpful. Okay, committee, what questions do you all have? Yes, Representative Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up on your question on Senate Bill 155, I pulled that 2012, 2013 starting Senate Bill 155 up. It seems like the tech colleges, community colleges are having challenges from this bill as far as not getting paid until the end of the semester. Do you agree with that?
Yes, it's designed as a reimbursement.
So would there be a possibility that we could relook back at this Senate Bill 155 again and look at perhaps a 50% reimbursement of 50% through the semester or something to get some of those funds to the tech colleges and the community colleges sooner? That would be my only comment of trying to get some funding in there to cover those initial costs, because the higher costs of most classes are on the front end, especially tech colleges, everything from materials, that kind of thing, you know, reusable kinds of equipment, that kind of thing. So just wondered on your feedback on that.
I think it'd be a very good discussion to have. It's been a very successful program from far as enrollment and student success and completion. The problem has been on us, frankly, being reimbursed our cost.
Okay. Representative Wassinger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jim, if I could ask, do you, I know that 10 years ago when I was in Leadership Kansas, they discussed the fact that we are very short of technical degrees of people working for us. And I can testify to that with trying to find someone to do work on my house or my electrical. Do you have any numbers on how what the shortage is of those technical careers that we're not able to get out because of the problems that you're having?
Let me reframe it this way. Unlike an English class in which I could take all the enrollment you could give me, I could just keep hiring either full-time professors or adjuncts and just let it grow. When you get into the technical programs, we're limited on enrollment because we need those labs, we need the materials, we need the qualified teachers. One of the hardest things for any of the tech colleges or community colleges to find is a plumbing instructor. Why? Plumbers make great money being a plumber, not teaching it. So our biggest hurdle in covering the shortage, frankly, is that capacity issue. There are many times each of our programs has to turn a few people away because we are full. We can't take any more. So that's a big issue. One of the things, again, related to your question, that all of us look at probably more closely than ever over the last 3 to 4 years is looking at the state labor data for our regions. And again, because of the change in the federal Perkins legislation, we have to look at high wage, high demand, or critical need. Critical need, for instance, real quickly would be the CNAs, the people that are essential across the state to provide that basic health care. It's not paid a sustainable wage, but it's also a pathway program where again, high school students start with that, find out, do I like healthcare or not? Otherwise, we all look at, for our regions, again, high wage, high demand. So in the past 2 years, I have, with my board's approval, we have terminated 2 of our programs that were costing us money, did not meet the high wage, high demand area for my region of the state. And with that, we get leaner and meaner, but then we look at what can I put in. So right now, for instance, we're looking at putting in plumbing and electrician training programs. Those are needed. So that's how we address it, looking at the data. I wouldn't know the data statewide. Per region is how we look at it.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. And I can tell you that my daughter did CNA, CMA training, and then also got her associate's degree at North Central Kansas in nursing, and now has her BSN in nursing, is going to doctorate school. So you were a great launching pad. Thank you very much.
We change people's lives every day. That's why it's fun with what we do.
Okay, I will ask one last question, and that is, you said start thinking about increased appropriations for capital outlay, but then also the funding formula has kind of flipped. So which of those is your priority?
Our priority is Excel and CTE #1, more than anything else. We need full funding in that. Second, for the tech colleges, would be capital outlay. Frankly, that's where we struggle in keeping up with both equipment and basic facilities. Again, nothing fancy.
Okay, and do any of your campuses have housing?
North Central Tech does at Beloit, and Northwest Tech does at Goodland. They also have athletics.
Okay. Okay, committee, any other questions for Jim? Representative Rajes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Now, Beloit doesn't have athletics. My son, well, maybe the hammer throw, but that's just when things don't go his way. But so you all did a great job, through this whole pandemic, with so much of your stuff as hands-on. Looking forward, though, you're the chair of the President's Council. What's the future of technical education? We've got to be learning something, maybe some tweaks more than just simply hands-on, moving forward. Many of us have had to learn skills without any formal training, like where you are. A year ago, I had no idea what Zoom, I thought Zoom was a program on PBS in the 70s.
It's a very good question. There are some silver linings in the middle of this pandemic. I want to tell you real quickly about our story here at this college, but how it's affected many of the others. When this shutdown hit in March, we did not panic for one reason. We were lucky. We've been the beneficiary of a federal grant called Title III. And for the past 3.5 years, we were actually putting all of our lectures online. We were preparing, because that's one of the ways we can try to reach out to grow the college. Lectures online so our teachers can spend more time, run more lab sections. I can put more people into building trades. I can put more people into welding. And each of our institutions has kind of adapted with that. They've reached out to us for some of that advice because we were ahead of the curve on it. Wichita Tech has done the same thing. So we definitely have learned how to do some things that way, to use distance learning where it's appropriate for the lectures, for demonstrations. One of the great things with the Zoom technology, all of our teachers record each of these sessions and demonstrations. Our students can watch it over and over. I'm not, I'm a liberal arts major running a tech college. My dad was the jack of all trades 8th grade dropout, said, you're not going to work like I did. I didn't learn anything from him, wish I did. I watch YouTube videos all the time to learn how to do basic maintenance. Our teachers adapt the same way with Zoom now and our online platforms. So I think we're actually going to see our ability to ramp up our access and capacity without needing that much more of investment. Our investment needs are really in the labs and the equipment. So while many areas of higher ed are thinking about decreasing students, we're looking at growth because we know the demand is there.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Okay, anyone else? Jim, thank you. That was super informative. We appreciate you being with us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, committee, our last presentation for the day, we're going to welcome Heather Morgan from the Kansas Independent Colleges. I'm sorry, community, we got mixed up. I know, yeah, okay. Yes, yeah, you do often appear together, but I'm sorry, you are the community colleges.
Yes, thank you, and I'm going to stay close to this mic so everyone at home can hear well. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today, and thank you for the opportunity to appear before this committee last week or a few weeks ago. I'm going to basically stay at a 90,000-foot view and then really zoom in on the community colleges' budgets, which are funded differently than the Regents universities and differently than the tech colleges, as you heard from Jim. The first page of my testimony gives you an illustration of how the community colleges are funded. Just as a review, we receive 36% of our budget from local property tax dollars, about 17% from tuition and fees, and about 18% from the state. So our community colleges have a significant local investment. Most of our expenses come in the form of instruction and instructional support. As I mentioned last time, we are an open access institution. We take all students who come to us wherever with whatever skills or language barriers they might have, and we get them up to speed and propel them on a path for success in whatever they might want to do. The community colleges are funded not on a block grant system, but basically on the number of students and credit hours that we teach and the type of credit hours. As Jim mentioned, technical education is very expensive, and we teach 70% of all the technical education hours in the state of Kansas. 9 of our community colleges are also technical colleges. They merged decades ago with the old VOTEC schools, and so now they also have a technical college designation. So to drill down onto the budget, we have essentially 3 line items. Both the community and technical colleges get 3 line items in the Board of Regents budgets. That's technical tiered, non-tiered, and Senate Bill 155, Excel and CTE. The tiered education, just think of that as technical. Just think of non-tiered as general education. And then Senate Bill 155 is technical education for high school students. So for our tiered and non-tiered funding, the governor cut those funds by 2%. 2% is, might not sound like a big cut. However, there has been a gap in the funding that the state is supposed to pay for community and technical colleges that's, again, almost decades old now, in the amount of about $15 to $20 million. So while that's a significant cut and certainly impacts our ability to do our job, we are very concerned about the Senate Bill 155 funding, and I'll come back to that. Just to give you a little bit of idea about the difference in where a student is from and the difference that makes in our funding formula. So I'm an alum of Pratt Community College, and I would be considered an in-district student for Pratt. So if I'm an in-district student, that means that I would pay for a third, the local taxing district would pay for a third, and the state would pay for a third of the cost. If I'm from Kingman County, next to Pratt County, and I would be an out-of-district student. So I would pay a third, and the state would pay 2/3, and we're just going to assume that the state is fully funding this. At the technical college, it's 1/3 student, 2/3 state. You just heard Jim talk about that. For Excel and CTE students, the state pays 100% of those costs, assuming we're fully funded. Going on to the next page of the testimony, I mentioned the 2% cut. It totals about $2.8 million, and that would be spread out across all of the technical and community colleges. The numbers in my testimony are inclusive of the technical colleges numbers as well. We work very closely together. Jim and I had talked before this hearing today and talk on a regular basis. We're a little bit different in the taxing authority, but other than that, we do a lot of the similar work. You turn to the next page, that's where you'll learn about the Excel and CTE and the rapid growth of the program and its unequivocal success. Those of you on appropriations, I think you heard the general contractors talk in the engineering initiative hearing about how important Senate Bill 155 is for their programs, and we often hear it from chambers and from employers across the state that the Senate Bill 155 program is the most successful thing that we have seen because it gets students into those technical careers early. It helps them find success. Sometimes the students may not be finding success in high school, but they're finding success once they get interested in a specific subject area. You can see that the headcount grew from 3,400 students initially in 2011 to over 13,000 students today. Additionally, the credit hours have grown. One of the things we saw in the pandemic was students taking a little less credit hours. We had a terrible mismatch of schedules and online learning, and so our Senate Bill 155 enrollment is down, was significantly down for fall. I will tell you that we now have some schools who have enrollment growth fall over spring. We're already seeing some of the recovery from the pandemic. You can see that 30% of the participants completed a certificate while still in high school. You might think, why is 30%? That's not a very high number. There are some programs that the students are not old enough to sit for the credential test while they're still in high school. So we know we have a number of students who complete with one more semester or when they turn 18. Participation in Senate Bill 155 programs, the students generally earn higher wages of about $3,500 per year, and they get a head start on college. Unfortunately, as Jim mentioned, we have a reimbursement problem with this program. It has always sort of been, I'm going to call it just-in-time budgeting. So just in time, we need a supplemental. No one in this building likes supplementals. I started my career in the budget office. I hate supplementals just as much as everyone else. And unfortunately, last year when we reconciled credit hours, we did not get paid 1% of what we were expecting. So we sent a bill for $100, we got back $99. None of us like to have to go back and tell our colleges that, sorry, you didn't get your bill paid. Last year, the legislature tried to fix that problem and included an $8.5 million increase to Senate Bill 155 that would have hopefully have gotten us out of this just-in-time budgeting and would have provided enough funding for the program going forward. Unfortunately, that amount was allotted. If you turn to the next page of the testimony, I included two tables, one related to credit hours and one related to students, just so you can see the growth of the program over time. And then the next table shows basically the difference in what our students have done and the funding that we need. You can see in 2020, our actual expenses for Senate Bill 155 were about $34 million. We estimated that we were going to need $38 million, and the legislature had provided that funding. We were back on track for what we thought we needed. Unfortunately, the $8.5 million was allotted, and then when the allocation came out, there was a 2% cut to the base allocation. So it was a problem on top of a problem when we got those funds cut. So you can see the gap in the 2020 rec from what we'll actually provide and what is funded. So based upon what we know for the 2020 fall semester, which was a decrease in enrollment, and what we're projecting for spring, we believe that we will need $2.1 million in the current fiscal year as a supplemental to fully fund Senate Bill 155. Based upon our best estimates, assuming we go back to pre-pandemic, we believe that we will need $8.3 million in FY 2022 as an enhancement to fully fund Senate Bill 155. Why this is important is A, it's a reimbursement, but B, we can't charge tuition. So students come to us, we're providing the course, and we have really no guarantee of payment except for you all helping us out through the appropriation process and hoping that we don't serve too many students. I'm going to go on and talk about some of our federal funds and the impact of COVID. If you turn to, and I really wish I would have numbered the pages, which apparently I didn't, a table that looks like this. This graph shows all of the COVID funds that the community colleges have received by institution. So we got CARES 1 funds, which had a couple other parts, and the part that I have shown you here on this table is just the part that went for the institution. Well, I'll talk about student funds separately. So we have CARES 1, we have Spark 1, which that's the county. Every single one of our counties gave the community college Spark funding. And I will tell you, at the local level, there was some knockdown dragouts about this fund. So I think that shows the importance that the community colleges play in each county. Then Spark 2 is funding from the state. And then 4 of our colleges actually got, and I think Jim would have mentioned this too, I know some of the technical colleges got Spark Commerce grants to invest in equipment for training the advanced manufacturing workforce. So 4 of our colleges got that Garden City Community College got $100,000 towards improving their technical education related to food and animal sciences. And then CARES 2 was the money that was just approved in December, and we're awaiting rules and instructions about how that money can be spent. But you can see the Kansas Community Colleges received $77 million for COVID relief funds. Now, what's important to know about this is they have very stringent rules. This is one-time money, and everything has to have a COVID nexus. We can get creative, but we can't get creative enough at this point to figure out how to pay for Senate Bill 155 with these funds. It's just probably not allowable. So none of us want to go to jail or be in trouble with the federal government, so we are not able to use these COVID funds for our Senate Bill 155 gap. How did we spend the dollars? On the next page, your testimony, I included by institution, by expenditure categories I thought y'all would be interested in, how much we spent. So we spent $9 million on virtual and switching to online learning. Just like Jim was mentioning, we put lectures online. We have to still have hands-on face-to-face, but a lot of investment in facilitation of distance learning. We do have dorms. We had dorm housing replacement and things like that. And also, another one of our main costs was COVID testing. The next 2 pages of the testimony, I'm going to just kind of skip over to make sure we have time for questions, but that's the amount of money our students received. So each CARES Act bill required a portion of our funds to go to students. So each college had its own process for how students were awarded funds. We are thinking very critically about how to use the CARES $2 for student scholarships. How do we use those in the most in-demand occupations like nursing and healthcare? And making sure that the dollars help students, but also help the state economy. So we're thinking critically about that aspect. So to wrap up, our main priority, though we have other issues related to tiered and non-tiered, is Senate Bill 155. We would request a $2.1 million supplemental and $8.3 million enhancement. And finally, we would encourage the committee to put a proviso in the budget, not because anything has happened in the past, but just to ensure that the funding that goes to community and technical colleges stays in those 3 funds. With that, I'm happy to stand for questions.
Okay, thank you, Heather. A quick question just to clarify. Your 9 technical colleges, so the 7 that we just heard about from Jim are separate. So there's really 16 technical colleges in the state. 7 of them are under the technical colleges and 9 of them are under you. Okay, just wanting to make sure I understood.
Just for your knowledge, it's Coffeyville, Cowley, Dodge, Highland, Hutch, Johnson, KCK, Pratt, and Seward are the
ones that have the technical. Okay, thank you. Okay, committee, what questions do you have for Heather? Anybody? Okay, Representative Wassinger.
More or less, I have a comment. My heart goes out to you. I know that Ellis County has $250,000 in COVID money from the state of Kansas that they can't use for their vaccine clinic. They can only use it for testing, but the state sent out all sorts of free testing. So we're sitting on a whole bunch of money, and I think that's a huge failure of insight into what we should be doing with COVID funds, and I think it needs to be changed throughout the state. So thank you.
I spent a lot of time this summer working on that exact issue.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anybody else? Questions for Heather? Okay, thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Okay, committee, we're getting out of here on time. Appreciate this. I don't think it's going to be true the next 2 days, but we'll try. But we have very busy committee days for the next 2 days. Tomorrow, we'll hear from 3 schools. And then Thursday, we will also hear from another school and do our recommendations. So be prepared. Okay, thank you. We're adjourned.